This episode of Scare You to Sleep is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Here's something we losers are stoked about. It, Welcome to Derry. From the creators of It, Chapters 1 and 2, comes a freaky new story set in 1960s Derry, Maine, one that explores the origins of Pennywise the Clown. This prequel series draws inspiration from the book's interludes, which dig deep into Derry's haunted past. It, Welcome to Derry, is streaming now on HBO Max. But that's not all. Jen, tell us about the It, Welcome to Derry official podcast.
Join hosts Mark Bernardin and Princess Weeks as they unpack each episode after it airs on HBO Max. On each episode, you'll hear from show creators like Andy and Barbara Muschietti, plus members of the cast and crew as they talk about the making of the show. New podcast episodes drop every week after the episode airs on HBO Max.
Stream new episodes of HBO's It, Welcome to Derry Sundays on HBO Max, and listen to the It, Welcome to Derry official podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, and welcome to Scare You to Sleep. I'm your host, Shelby Novak, and I'm here to read you a bedtime story. As many of you know by now, I have a fondness for nautical ghostly tales, be they from the shore in the form of haunted lighthouses, or the sea in the form of ghost ships. This week I have a friend here in my home convalescing from surgery, but I didn't want to leave you without a little tidbit of mystery and horror, so I thought it was the perfect time to do a type of episode I haven't done in a while, one where I tell you about one ghostly topic. Since I've already covered haunted lighthouses, I think it's time we leave the safety of shore and move into the realm of ghost ships, especially since on November 10th, it will be the 50th anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald, which hasn't been seen as a ghost ship as far as I know, but was the inspiration for one of the greatest songs ever about a ship sinking, and one of the greatest songs ever, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald by Gordon Lightfoot. These I'm going to share tonight range from folkloric stories of ships being helmed by witches and demons, all the way to actual accounted for vessels that have been found mysteriously abandoned. So, let me tell you about a few. There are different types of ghost ships. There are the kind like the legendary Flying Dutchman that is a supposed apparition of a long-gone ship. But then there are the kind that are ships found abandoned, their crew and passengers mysteriously gone. I wasn't sure which kind you'd be more interested in, so I'll share a few from both categories. First, let me go through a few of the more paranormal ships, since there isn't as much information about these. Our first story is for my Canadian listeners. I debated starting this with the Chasse Galerie, but that is technically a canoe, so instead, let's begin with the ghost ship of Northumberland Strait. By the way, Canadians, you have like a surprising amount of this particular type of ghost ship, the apparition type. I'm not going to cover even close to all of them because we need to let some other countries and their ghost ships shine, but why your ships always come back from the dead, I have no idea. Comment or write in to tell me if you know. The legend of a ghost ship in Northumberland Strait dates back at least 200 years, and it is typically described as a beautiful schooner that has 3 or 4 masts with pure white sails, all of which are said to become completely engulfed in flames as onlookers watch. The Northumberland Strait separates Prince Edward Island from New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, and according to local folklore, the ghost ship appears before a northeast wind and as a forewarning of a storm. A number of legends and ghost stories exist that describe sightings of the ghost ship over the years and include descriptions of distinct outlines of the ship's masts and phantom crew members climbing them before the vessel supposedly either completely burns, sinks, or vanishes. According to legend, in 1900, a group of sailors boarded a small rowboat in Charlottetown Harbor and raced towards the phantom ship to rescue the crew, only to have the ship vanish. In January 2008, 17-year-old Mathieu Giguère told a local newspaper that he believed he saw the legendary phantom ship in the Tatamagouche Bay, describing it as a bright white and gold ship. Tatamagouche mountain resident Melville Lungi, I think, I'm so sorry, my French is not good, also claims he saw the ship one night in October, explaining, "I believe in all that stuff and I don't know what else it would be." This next one is very folkloric. This is the legend of the Caluche, which is related to many aspects of history and the beliefs of the Chiloé archipelago. It is a marvelous ship of music and lights that travels along Chiloé canals. Allegedly, it is a pirate ship crewed by witches and demons, only witnessed at night, appearing as an intensely illuminated ship and held responsible for the kidnappings of young women, night raids, and robbery. The ship captures sailors aboard other sailed boats by attracting them with alluring orchestral music. Allegedly, ordinary people who board it fall into a kind of stupor, preventing them from divulging any secrets about the ship, or anyone fallen victim, even in a slight way, turns mad, with his face always turning backwards. The Caluche can disappear instantly. You can also take on the appearance of other things to escape notice, like a tree trunk, especially a cypress, and even come ashore that way, or remain afloat, or the ship may turn into a rock. Its sailors can transform into seals, sea lions, dolphins, or seabirds. The ship sails at an extraordinary speed. In order to observe the ship without being noticed, one must cover one's mouth, because they can smell one's breath. There are also varieties of trees behind which one can hide so as not to be captured by the Caluche, some being the maki berry tree and the tike tree. It is said that when certain conditions are met, such as it being a foggy day, the ship becomes discernible to other seafarers, or the luminous ship seems to appear and disappear surrounded by fog. The sound of chains, parties, music, flutes, horns, pipes, and drums, and the dominating outline of the ship makes it unmistakable. According to some, it is an incorporeal ship and will pass right through other vessels, but some insist it is real enough. Many believe that the sailors of the ship have a leg attached to their spine. Other informants add that the crew's deformity of one leg bent backwards forces them to hop around to maneuver, and, as aforementioned, are purposely kept as forgetful idiots in order to protect the ship's secrets. In contrast, others describe the crew as specially dressed and well-presented, walking elegantly in long leather boots, except when one greets them with a handshake, their hands will feel very cold. So that was the one only truly folkloric ship that I left on the list. There are so many that are amazing, and I just wanted to keep this episode a little more rooted in reality for the rest of it. So the rest of these ships are, they were definitely real ships, at least. I can't speak to whether they turned into ghosts, but they were real, actual ships. So just a heads up for those of you who are a little more skeptical in my audience, these are for you. So our next ship is the HMS Eurydice, and I'm not sure that makes for a very lucky name for a ship, personally. I'm not surprised it's on the list of ghost ships. If you're not familiar with the tragedy of Orpheus and Eurydice, I highly recommend looking it up or finding a production of Hadestown near you. So, the ship bearing this tragic figure's name was designed by Admiral the Honorable George Eliot. She originally saw service on the North American and West Indies station between 1843 and 1846 under the command of her first captain, George Augustus Eliot. After being recommissioned under the command of Captain Marcus Augustus Stanley Hare, Eurydice sailed from Portsmouth on a 3-month tour of the North America and West Indies station, which had its headquarters at Bermuda, on the 13th of November, 1877. On the 6th of March, 1878, she began her return voyage from the Royal Navy dockyard in Bermuda for Portsmouth. After a very fast passage across the Atlantic, on the 24th of March, 1878, Eurydice was caught in a heavy snowstorm off the Dunno's Headland at the Isle of Wight, capsized and sank in Sandown Bay. A weather report in the Midland Naturalist explained, "The violent but brief atmospheric disturbance which was the cause of this catastrophe appears to have advanced from the northwest and reached the north of England about 10 a.m., taking a southeasterly course. Snow began to fall at Leicester about 1:45 and was followed by a strong, gusty wind. But in an hour, all was over. The situation of the Eurydice, but a short distance from the southeast of high cliffs, behind which chalk downs rise to a height of 800 or 900 feet, will sufficiently explain the way in which the squall took the vessel by surprise. The squall, advancing from the northwest, the vessel was screened from until it burst down the steep slope of the land in full fury. Only 2 of the ship's 319 crew and trainees survived. Most of those who were not carried down with the ship died of exposure in the freezing waters. Captain Hare, a devout Christian, after giving the order to every man to save himself, clasped his hands in prayer and went down with his ship. One of the witnesses to the disaster was toddler Winston Churchill, who was living at Ventnor with his family at the time. The wreck was refloated later that same year, but had been so badly damaged during her submersion that she was then subsequently broken up. Her ship's bell is preserved in St. Paul's Church, Gatton, Shanklin. There is a memorial in the churchyard at Christ Church, the Broadway, Sandown, and another at Shanklin Cemetery in Lake, where 7 crew members are buried. The ship's anchor is set into a memorial at Clay Hall Cemetery, Gosport. 2 of her crew, David Bennett and Alfred Barnes, are buried in Rottingdean St. Margaret's Churchyard, where bodies were washed ashore nearby. There are 4 in the grave, but only 2 of the men could be identified. Now, for the ghost part of this ship. The phantom Eurydice has been sighted frequently by sailors over the years since her sinking. It is said to haunt Dunno's, a cape on the Isle of Wight that lies west of Shanklin, close to the village of Lacombe, at the southwesterly end of Sandown Bay. Once again, for the 5 millionth time on the show, to my UK listeners, apologies for the many mistakes I definitely just made pronouncing all of these areas. Most notably, on the 17th of October, 1998, Prince Edward of the United Kingdom reportedly saw the three-masted ship off the Isle of Wight while filming for the television series Crown and Country. The film crew claimed to have captured its image on film. There's also a story from Commander F. Lipscomb of a Royal Navy submarine which took evasive action to avoid the ship, only for it to disappear. Now, I know you've heard of the Flying Dutchman, but have you heard of the Flying Dutchman of the Great Lakes? Yep, Canada, it's your turn again. There's just so many of them. The SS Bannockburn was a Canadian-registered steel-hulled freighter that disappeared on Lake Superior in snowy weather on November 21st, 1902. The final voyage of the Bannockburn began at the Canadian Lakehead near what is now known as Thunder Bay, under Captain George R. Wood. She was downbound, carrying 85,000 bushels of wheat, leaving the city of Fort William on November 20th and headed for Georgian Bay. She suffered a slight grounding, but no apparent damage on her way out to the open lake, and her departure was delayed 1 day. She recommenced her journey on the 21st. Sometime that day, Captain James McMaw of the upbound Algonquin, another lake freighter, reported viewing her through binoculars about 7 miles to the southeast of him and about 80 miles, or 130 kilometers, off Keweenaw Point, at 40 miles, 64 kilometers, off Isle Royale. He was well acquainted with her profile, and he stated that he viewed her several times over the course of a few minutes to note her progress, which was very nearly on course. At a certain moment, however, he attempted to spot her and was surprised that he was unable to do so. He blamed this sudden disappearance on the somewhat foggy weather and dismissed it. A powerful winter storm raked Lake Superior that night. At 11 o'clock p.m., the night watch pilot house crew of the passenger steamer Huronic, also upbound on the lake, reported seeing lights on a ship they passed in the storm, which they believed were in the pattern of those of the Bannockburn. However, no signals of distress were observed, and the two ships passed each other without incident. The Bannockburn was reported overdue the following morning at the Sioux Locks. But, given the weather the previous night, this was not considered unusual. When she still did not report several days later, however, the fear that she had been lost began to grow. On November 25th, the steamer Frank Rockefeller passed through a field of floating debris near Stannard Rock Light, which might have been that of the Bannockburn. Though at this time the Bannockburn had not yet been reported lost, and the crew of the Rockefeller did not know what might have caused the debris field. By November 30th, the ship and crew were officially given up as lost. By November 26th, under pressure from the increasingly distressed families of the crew, a Mr. L.L. Henderson, a manager of the Montreal Transportation Company, claimed he had received a wire from the Chicago office of the Underwriters Association, which was providing insurance coverage for the ship. He told a local newspaper, the Fort Williams Times-Journal, that the message read, "The steamer Bannockburn has been located on the north shore of Lake Superior, opposite Michipicoten Island. Crew safe." He later admitted he had no positive information as to her whereabouts, but had based his hopeful assertion on news he had heard from the Germanic, another freighter, that she had been seen safely anchored there. Eventually, the underwriters came to the conclusion that the Bannockburn had stranded on Caribou Island. The island is surrounded by a dangerous reef, and its lighthouse had been intentionally turned off on November 15th. If the captain of the Bannockburn had been hoping to spot its warning light in the darkness of the storm on the 21st, the only evidence he would have had of his closing proximity would have been the shock of the hull striking the reef itself. On Friday, December 12th, the captain of the Grande Marais life-saving station found a cork life preserver from the Bannockburn, washed up on the beach. This item is the only known wreckage from the ship ever to have been recovered. Captain Wood from Port Dalhousie, Ontario, was the oldest person aboard the vessel at age 37. Most of the crew were between the ages of 17 and 20. His first mate, Alex Graham, was also from Port Dalhousie, Ontario. One of the ship's two wheelsmen, Arthur Callahan, was only 16. Although the ship was considered to be of recent manufacture, at 9 years old it was still thought of as almost new. The overall inexperience of her crew might have been a factor in her being lost. Such young crews, however, were common on the Great Lakes at the turn of the 20th century because they were inexpensive to hire and shipping firms had strong financial incentives and no legislative reason not to take advantage of this whenever they might. There are many theories as to what went wrong. Captain McMaw proposed that the ship might have experienced a boiler explosion, though he did not hear one, and no charred wreckage typical of such an explosion was later found anywhere along the route that the Bannockburn was known to have taken. Alternatively, the at that time uncharted danger of the Superior Shoal might have also been the cause. When the Sioux locks were drained at the end of that season, a hull plate from a ship was found in the lock. It was supposed to have belonged to the Bannockburn, and without it, her hull would have had an unknown weak point. The only known memorial to the Bannockburn is a stone tablet in a church in Port Dalhousie, Ontario. It is in memory of her captain and was purchased by his brother. The wreck of the ship has never been found, with the exception of an oar and a life preserver, and no bodies were ever recovered. Within a year of her disappearance, she acquired a reputation as a ghost ship and became known as the Flying Dutchman of the Great Lakes. Her fate remains an unsolved mystery. This episode of Scare You to Sleep is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Here's something we losers are stoked about. It, Welcome to Derry. From the creators of It, Chapters 1 and 2, comes a freaky new story set in 1960s Derry, Maine, one that explores the origins of Pennywise the Clown. This prequel series draws inspiration from the book's interludes, which dig deep into Derry's haunted past. It, Welcome to Derry, is streaming now on HBO Max. But that's not all. Jen, tell us about the It, Welcome to Derry official podcast.
Join hosts Mark Bernardin and Princess Weeks as they unpack each episode after it airs on HBO Max. On each episode, you'll hear from show creators like Andy and Barbara Muschietti, plus members of the cast and crew as they talk about the making of the show. New podcast episodes drop every week after the episode airs on HBO Max.
Stream new episodes of HBO's It, Welcome to Derry Sundays on HBO Max, and listen to the It, Welcome to Derry official podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Now I'd like to move into the other type of ghost ship, one that is found adrift and empty, full of nothing but mystery. Of course, the most famous of these ships is the Marie Celeste, but she honestly requires an entire episode all to herself. There's so many interesting theories that I'd hate to give you a Cliff Notes version for the old gal. So, let me tell you about a few of her enigmatic peers. The first of this category is the Duc de Danzig, a brig launched in 1808 at Nantes that became a privateer. She captured a number of vessels, generally plundering them and then letting them go or burning them. Duc de Danzig was last heard of on the 13th of December, 1811, when the privateer Gazelle reached Morlaix and reported on her activities. After the last mention of her, Duc de Danzig disappeared without a trace. She might have been cruising in the Atlantic or in the Caribbean at the time, and either been sunk in a night encounter against a British frigate or in a tropical cyclone. Napoleon Gallois later relayed the legend that an unspecified French frigate had encountered the wreck of the Duc de Danzig, drifting at sea, covered with dried blood and the putrefying corpses of her crew, many crucified to the masts of her deck. There were no signs that she had been in a recent battle, no new shot holes, and her sails and rigging were intact. Some blood-stained papers found in the captain's cabin identified her captain as Francois Argonaud. The crew of the frigate set the brig ablaze. Some of these accounts are so old that there isn't a lot of information, but they're terrifying to think about nonetheless, like that last one from 1808. I mean, imagine coming upon a floating ship. A lot of times they're just sort of empty. This one was covered in dried blood and bodies crucified to the masts. I mean, now I want to write a whole story about it. Another one of these that there isn't a lot of information on is the SV Seabird. In 1750 or 1760, the ship grounded herself at Easton's Beach, Rhode Island. Her longboat was missing, and she had been returning from a voyage to Honduras and was expected in Newport that day. The ship was apparently abandoned in sight of land. Coffee was boiling on the galley stove and drifted off course. The only living beings found on the ship were a dog and a cat. The vessel was eventually sold to a merchant of Newport, who changed her name to the Beach Bird, in which she made many voyages. A fictional account of how she became derelict appeared in the Wilmington, Delaware Sunday Morning Star for October 11, 1885. There are many variations of this story that have often been retold, that many consider the story to be nothing more than a myth. I did read the article, though, and it's really fascinating, just pretty lengthy. I've always wanted to do an episode of just vintage scary articles. I think I've done something similar before, but they're just so fascinating to me. So maybe one day I'll read that on the show sometime, if there's any interest for it, of course. For the last part of the show, I wanted to talk about one of my favorite nautical mysteries. I'm cheating a little bit because this isn't really a ghost ship per se, because it totally disappeared. Funny aside before I dive into it, so back when the musical Hamilton was fairly new, at the suggestion of a few of my friends, I listened to the album and promptly became obsessed, like many people did. However, as soon as I got to the track, Dear Theodosia, I immediately sent a voice note to my group chat, as the giant history nerd I am, and asked, oh shit, do they eventually talk about Theodosia's mysterious disappearance? And to the dismay of my less historically inclined friends, they were like, what? The sweet baby that Aaron Burr sings about in the musical? And were incredibly sad to hear me relay the following story of Theodosia Burr's untimely fate, which, spoiler alert, the musical doesn't mention. I was a little disappointed in that, but, I don't think they could fit it in. And if you didn't know that, I apologize for putting this depressing asterisk on that song every time you listen to it from now on. quick backstory. Theodosia eventually married a man named Joseph Alston. They had a son who sadly passed from malaria. She suffered extreme anguish after the passing of her son, but eventually decided to go stay with her father, Aaron Burr, in New York while her husband was a bit busy, having just been sworn in as governor of South Carolina and all. During this time, Aaron Burr was still persona non grata and had recently returned from a sort of exile in Europe after, well, some more spoilers if you didn't know, killing Alexander Hamilton. So, on December 31st, 1812, several months after the War of 1812 had broken out, yes, there was a whole lot going on at this time in history, dear Theodosia set sail aboard the schooner Patriot. The Patriot was a famously fast ship which had originally been built as a pilot boat and had served as a privateer during the war, when it was commissioned by the U.S. government to prey on English shipping. It had been refitted in December in Georgetown, its guns dismounted and hidden below decks. Its name was painted over, and any indication of recent activity was entirely erased. The schooner's captain, William Overstocks, desired to make a rapid run to New York with his cargo, and it is likely that the ship was laden with the proceeds from its privateering raids. The Patriot and all those aboard were never heard from again. Okay, let's get into the theories of the absolute strangeness that happened around the disappearance of this very famous, I want to call her a socialite. I don't know if that's appropriate, but we'll go with that. Immediately following the Patriot's disappearance, rumors arose. The most enduring was that the Patriot had been captured by a pirate and that something had occurred near Cape Hatteras, notorious for wreckers who lured ships into danger. Aaron Burr refused to credit any of the rumors of his daughter's possible capture, believing that she had died in a shipwreck. But the rumors persisted long after his death, and after around 1850, more substantial explanations of the mystery surfaced, usually alleging to be from the deathbed confessions of sailors and from criminals about to be executed. One story, which was considered somewhat plausible, was that the Patriot had fallen prey to wreckers known as the Carolina Bankers, who operated near Nags Head, North Carolina, and were known for pirating wrecks and murdering both passengers and crews. When the sea did not serve up wrecks for their plunder, they lured ships into the shoals. On stormy nights, the bankers would hobble a horse, tie a lantern around the animal's neck, and walk it up and down the beach. Sailors at sea could not distinguish the bobbing light they saw from that of a ship that was anchored securely. Often they steered toward shore to find shelter. Instead, they became wrecked on the banks, after which their crews and passengers were killed. In relation to this, Mr. J.A. Elliott of Norfolk, Virginia, made a statement in 1910 that in the early part of 1813, the dead body of a young woman with every indication of refinement had been washed ashore at Cape Charles and had been buried on her finder's farm. Writing in the Charleston's News and Courier, Foster Haley claimed that documents he had discovered in the state archives in Mobile, Alabama, said that the Patriot had been captured by a pirate vessel captained by John Howard Payne, and that every person on board had been murdered by the pirates, including a woman who was obviously a noblewoman or a lady of high birth. However, Haley never identified or cited the documents he had supposedly found. Another myth traces its origin to Charles Gaillare's 1872 novel Fernando de Lemos, Truth and Fiction. Gayare devoted one chapter to a fictional confession by the pirate Dominique Yo, admitting to having captured the Patriot after discovering it dismasted off Cape Hatteras following a storm. In Gaillare's account, Yo and his men murdered the crew while Alston was made to walk the plank. That's Theodosia. Her last name was Alston now, remember? Just making sure. She stepped on it and descended into the sea with graceful composure, as if she had been alighting from a carriage, Gayare wrote in Yo's voice. She sank, and rising again, she, with an indescribable smile of angelic sweetness, waved her hand to me as if she meant to say, "Farewell and thanks again," and then sank forever. Because Gayare billed his novel as a mixture of truth and fiction, there was popular speculation about whether this account of Yo's confession might be real, and the story entered American folklore. Speaking of American folklorist Edward Rowe Snow later published an account in Strange Tales from Nova Scotia to Cape Hatteras, incorporating the Gayare story with later offshoots. For example, a woman named Harriet Sprague made a sworn statement before a Michigan notary on February 14, 1903, claiming to corroborate details in Gayare's novel concerning Yo's confession. Sprague described the contents of an 1848 confession made by pirate Frank Burdick, an alleged shipmate of Yo, when the Patriot was attacked. In Burdick's version, the pirates left most of Alston's clothing untouched, as well as a portrait of her. Later, wreckers, locals known for rifling stranded vessels in often criminal fashion, discovered the deserted Patriot, and one of them carried the painting and clothing ashore. A legend later arose in Bald Head Island, North Carolina, that Theodosia roams the beaches, searching for the painting. A popular, though very improbable, local story in Alexandria, Virginia, suggests that Alston may have been the mysterious female stranger who died at Gadsby's Tavern on October 14, 1860. She was buried in St. Paul's Cemetery with a gravestone inscription that begins, "To the memory of a female stranger whose mortal sufferings terminated on the 14th day of October, 1816, aged 23 years and 8 months." So, this is another little tidbit onto this story. This is about the Nag's Head portrait. In 1869, physician William G. Poole treated Polly Mancaring, an elderly woman in Nag's Head, and noticed an unusually expensive-appearing oil painting on her wall. Mancaring gave it to him as payment and claimed that when she was young, her first husband had discovered it on a wrecked ship during the War of 1812. Poole became convinced the portrait was of Theodosia and contacted members of her family, some of whom agreed, though Poole conceded that they cannot say positively if it was her because none of them had ever seen her. Mary Alston Pringle, who had been Alston's sister-in-law, was the only person contacted by Poole who had actually known Theodosia, and Pringle could not recognize the painting as a portrait of her. The portrait is now at Yale University's Lewis Walpole Library. And for my beautiful skeptics out there, here's a less romantic analysis of the known facts that has led some scholars to conclude that the Patriot was probably wrecked by a storm off Cape Hatteras. Logbooks from the blockading British fleet report a severe storm that began off the Carolina coast in the afternoon of January 2nd, 1813, and continued into the next day. James L. Michie, an archaeologist from South Carolina who studied the course of the storm, concluded that the Patriot was likely just north of Cape Hatteras when the storm was at its fiercest. If the ship managed to escape the battering, which continued until midnight, Michie said, it then faced near hurricane-force winds in the early hours of Sunday. Given this knowledge, the Patriot probably sank between 6 p.m. Saturday, January 2nd, and 8 a.m. Sunday, January 3rd. Thus concludes the tragic mystery of the disappearance of Theodosia Burr. And with that, I will leave you with the sounds of the sea and the ennui of someone waiting for their lover to return from a tragically fated voyage. Don't worry, if you want, I'm more than happy to talk about ghost ships again. There are plenty more that I didn't cover. So let me know, and if you'd like more, please follow the show on social media at Scare You to Sleep. You can follow me personally at Shelby B. Novak. You can go join the Facebook group. Just look for Scare You to Sleep and the spin-off group, Scare You to Eat, where we talk about food. And let's see, you can join the Bloody Disgusting Discord. Bloody Disgusting just started recently a new Discord server. I get confused between server and channel. See, that's why I'm not very good at Discord, but it's there. You can go talk to Xena, my co-host of the Bloody Disgusting podcast. And if you'd like more of me in a different fashion, a less relaxing fashion, you can go check out the Bloody Disgusting podcast, which also comes out weekly every Wednesday. And we talk about horror news and play games and have a whole lot of fun, Xena and I. You can also join the Patreon, patreon.com/scareyoutosleep for bonus episodes and ad-free episodes. And to my patrons who are listening, bonus episodes will be returning. As I mentioned at the top of the show, life got a little crazy. So I will be back to you, my loves, as soon as I can. And let's see what else. I thank you. Thank you, everyone, for a wonderful Halloween season. I know we're just out of it, but thank you so much. I'm so glad to those of you who enjoyed Araceli. And, I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but some of you put in a little guess that the ending of Araceli suggested that maybe we won't have to wait for Halloween to hear from Araceli and her friends. And you are absolutely correct. I put that in, for a reason. For logistics. I didn't want her to have to stay in Halloween time. I want her to be able to come out to play for the rest of the year. And as the author, I can do that. So I gave a canonical reason for that to happen. Anyway, thank you so much for all of your kind words about every Araceli Part 3, Chapter 3. So I hope you enjoyed this quick little episode. It's not as short as I thought it would be, but I am going to get back to Florence Nightingaling and all that. So I will see you next week. Go get some sleep. Sweet dreams. This episode of Scare You to Sleep is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.